Hello and welcome back to Into the Shadows. I'm Melissa. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're tuning in again, welcome back. Lately, I've been thinking about synchronicity and also thinking about the magic of the world around us. Synchronicity means something to me because the way I discovered it in my life was when I was in a dark night of the soul. And I didn't yet quite know how to trust myself. I still struggled with decisions and knowing what was right for me and what wasn't. And so that's how synchronicity initially came in. And then it became this beautiful unfolding for messages and signs from the universe to confirm that I was on the right path. It also helped me feel more deeply connected. For most of my life, I haven't had a lot of support. If you're familiar with not having a lot of support, you know how lonely and hard that can feel. So for me, learning to listen and notice synchronicities, it became this beautiful symphony of divine orchestration where I felt like even though I was alone, something larger was looking out for me. And so it not only helped me with making decisions and having confirmations about those decisions, it became my connection to spirit, to the other side. I feel like the other side is constantly trying to get our attention. I just feel like because we live such busy lives and we get torn in so many different directions, it's hard to look around and notice and see what it is that the universe is trying to tell us. And sometimes these symbols are really simple. Sometimes they're more profound. But I do think that if we're willing to pause and listen and notice, the whole unseen realm opens up to us. This is one of the ways I tell people you can start to remember your dreams. Simply by expanding your awareness, opening yourself up to the universe, and noticing what it is that it's trying to tell you. It heightens your awareness, and if you're heightening your awareness during the day and you start to notice signs and the things around you as not a mere coincidence, but as something guiding you, then that translates to your sleep. When you go to bed, you're more likely to be more lucid. You start to observe and be aware in your dreams. So it gives you this beautiful heightened awareness to the what is. Now, Carl Jung is the one who coined this term synchronicity. And what he has said about synchronicity, it's where an inner state and an outer event coincide in a way that is meaningful. He noticed that inner experiences like dreams, thoughts, and emotions line up with outer experiences, often not logically. He believed it connected to a hidden order of the universe, where psyche and matter are two sides of the same reality, where they're speaking the same language, not by logic, but by meaning. Meaning that there really aren't coincidences. So that's what I'm going to speak about today. I'm going to give you some stories about synchronicity in my life and what it taught me. So the very first time that I ever had a synchronicity, or I guess the very first time I ever noticed a synchronicity, was when I was shortly after I was divorced. I was at work and this woman was telling me about synchronicities. She was telling me about how she would ask the universe about someone or something and ask for a sign, and how she got 3 butterflies that showed up in response to her question. She told me how to do it, and at the time I was on the fence about breaking up with my current boyfriend, and I wasn't 100% sure what to do. This is when I really didn't trust myself. And she said to state it out loud what it is. What is the thing that you want to ask? And I said, I want to know if I should break up with my boyfriend. She's like, okay, great. Now what is your sign? And I said, the first thing that popped into my head was a fox. And I was like, universe, send me a fox if I'm supposed to break up with my boyfriend. And I left work and I got home, and for whatever reason, I decided to check Facebook. And I got on Facebook, and my boyfriend at the time had posted a video that day, and I clicked on it. And this is crazy. And in the video, I click on it, and he's in a field and he's taking a video. And then he starts saying, there's a fox over there. There's a fox over there. And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. I mean, not only did I ask and get what I asked for, but it was from the person I asked it about and the exact same day that I asked it. So that was the beginning of noticing and really listening to signs and synchronicities. And I think that moment definitely cemented that there is something to this asking and receiving thing. The next synchronicity that I want to bring in here is a few years ago, I had a dream. And in this dream, I was on a beach, but I was separate from my family. They were like down the shore and I was by myself. And in the dream, I had an umbrella. And on top of the umbrella was an eagle. And it was just sitting on top of this umbrella. I didn't think much about it. I thought it was a cool dream when I woke up. This wasn't a time in my life where I was actively integrating my dreams. And so I kind of forgot about it. And then about a year after that, I was in an ayahuasca ceremony. I remember in this ceremony, the dream came to mind, the eagle dream. And I remember the message really loud and clear. An eagle is protecting you. I wrote it down in my journal the next day after the ceremony and also kind of forgot about it. Then another year passes and I'm reading in my journal and I'm like revisiting my notes and rereading my experience. And I read this passage, an eagle is watching out for you. It's protecting you. And I thought, wow, I kept forgetting about that. And I wasn't really quite sure what it meant. So I read that, and the next day, my son had gone fishing. And he comes home at night, and he walks through the door, and he goes, "I have a surprise for you." And I said, "What?" And he said, so he holds out this feather, and he goes, "It's an eagle feather." Now, I hadn't told my son about this journal entry. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. And he was out fishing and found an eagle feather and decided to bring it home for me. Coincidentally, or rather synchronistically, the day after I read that an eagle was protecting me. And it just made me drop my jaw in awe that things can align in such a meaningful, magical way. Shortly after this experience with the eagle, like a few days after, I was on my daily walk, a trail that I walk on by my house. And I was feeling particularly sad that day, and I had veered off of this trail to sit by the river, and I just allowed myself to process and cry. I was reading a book by Pete Walker on CPTSD, and the tears were so much gratitude for understanding more deeply the childhood trauma that I went through, and also just in a lot of grieving and sadness for what I had to grow up in. After that moment on the river, I didn't think much about it and went home. And then the next day, I went on my walk. And the very spot where I stopped and was crying and reflecting on this trauma, there was a bald eagle on the tree just right above where I was sitting. I really thought, there's no way this is a coincidence. And it did make me feel protected. I really feel like spirit and eagle medicine was guiding me through navigating those challenging things I had to deal with my family. The next synchronicity was a hummingbird. For some reason, animal spirits come through the most for me. I think because they have certain medicine that we're meant to research and look into and see what they symbolize. And hummingbirds, for me, represent ancestors. The very first time that I connected to a hummingbird, I got a hummingbird feeder, and I put that red store-bought dye inside of this hummingbird feeder. And after a few days, I kind of had this thought, like, wait a second, what's in this hummingbird feeder? Like, what did they put in this? I know red dye is so bad for you. And so I went and I read the label, and it said red 40. And I was like, why the hell are people selling this for nature, for hummingbirds, when it has all these chemicals in it and food coloring? So I took it down. And it was crazy because the universe literally answered me in real time. That night, I go to bed and I'm laying on the grass and my hands are outstretched and I see a hummingbird up in a tree. And in my mind, I tell the hummingbird to come down and lay on my hand. And it does. And I woke up from that dream just thinking, holy shit. Here I listened to my intuition. I took down this thing that harms them. And then spirit and nature shows up in my dream to say what felt like thank you. And it really made me realize just how connected our waking life is to our dream life and how connected we are to this other side. Hummingbirds continued to show up in my life. Before my mom died, I had a dream where I was walking with her and she was talking about how she was scared to die. And in the dream, I was telling her, I don't think it's as scary as we think it is. And just then, a white hummingbird shows up in the dream and flutters right in front of us. And then after my mom died, I remember walking into my garage and just having thoughts to myself and thinking, I wonder if my mom and I would be friends. Because when she was living, I only felt like I could connect with her so deep because she was in her own denial. And I just, it was like a curiosity question in the moment. I wonder if we would be friends. And in that moment, seriously, maybe like 3 seconds went by. And a hummingbird flies into my garage and just flutters right in front of me. It's like, that's crazy. And in shamanism, hummingbirds are your ancestors. I mean, just think about that for a minute. Like, that's not a coincidence. That was a synchronicity. It was a perfect example of what Carl Jung was speaking about, where an inner state lines up with an outer event in a way that feels meaningful. And it was meaningful because in that moment, I knew that the question when I asked it, would my mom and I be friends? Spirit answered, or rather hummingbird answered, yes. And it gave me hope that maybe someday, somewhere, I would be able to connect with my mom in a way that felt more authentic than what I had previously experienced in this life. Then I had another dream about a hummingbird, that it was guiding my path. Before starting this podcast, I was really scared to start it. Sometimes it still freaks me out. But I asked Spirit, are you protecting me? Because speaking my truth and sharing my voice and being authentic hasn't always been something that has been well received in my life. And that night I had a dream. I was walking through a doorway and there was a hummingbird. And I heard it say, we're protecting you. And shortly after that, I was telling a friend about this dream and just explaining how connected we are to this earth, whether we know it or not. And I swear, the craziest thing. So I'm telling my friend about this, and I come home and I'm in my room and it's on a second floor, and a hummingbird literally flies in front of my window and hovers, just hovering there. I've never seen that. I've lived in this same place for 10 years. Never have I had a hummingbird come and just flutter in front of my window. And I know that that was the other side saying, keep going. Keep sharing your truth and know that you are protected. You are being watched out for. The last synchronicity I want to share with you happened recently after I recorded a podcast. The podcast was about feeling like I wasn't enough and how this series of dreams came through around that theme. And one of the dreams that showed up it showed up as self-doubt. And it was really funny because in the dream, I was wearing really tight pants. And they were so tight, I couldn't walk. And I was walking like a penguin. And when I woke up, I laughed and realized that this self-doubt that I was wearing, my psyche was showing it as walking like a penguin, which for a human is definitely not conducive. Then I had posted some episodes that felt really raw, and there was a part of me that wanted to delete them. So I don't know how long, maybe a week or two had passed after that penguin dream. And I hadn't really thought that much about it, but I know I was feeling this not enoughness and really doubting myself. And I was going down the stairs, and my son was down there, and he said, "Why are you waddling?" And I didn't even think anything of it. I just was like, I don't know. I guess I'm walking weird. And then I was taking him to a friend's house, and I get to the light, and the car in front of me, the license plate says Penguin. I was like, and so I said something. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. I just had that dream about a penguin. And then my son was like, yeah, and I just told you that you were waddling. And I was like, oh my gosh. It's just too coincidental to be a coincidence, right? So it was this really funny synchronicity of the universe saying, hey, you might be having this self-doubt, but we're just going to remind you to stop walking like the penguin and to let this self-doubt go. And so that's how synchronicity works. It's these beautiful moments where the other side, something higher is guiding. We're not logically thinking, oh, point A to point B, this is how it works. I really believe that it's the magic. I think it is magic. I think it's what connects everything. And I definitely don't think that we're alone. I do think we're guided, and I do think that the universe is always listening. It's just up to us to listen and to notice and to believe. So maybe this week, if you have a question that is heavy on your heart, or maybe you feel alone, you can absolutely ask for signs and synchronicities and listen for how nature and spirit wants to speak to you. And don't discount it. It's so easy to chalk things off to coincidence. The different ways that synchronicity can come through, it could be, some art that you see, maybe a bumper sticker on a car. Maybe it just comes through a symbol. Maybe it comes through a dream. Whatever way it decides to come through for you, honor it, recognize it, and know that it's Spirit's way of saying you're on the right path. So thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to my stories about synchronicity. I think it's the most joyful, fun thing. I really hope that if this isn't something in your life that you've been attuned to, that you can start opening up to it. Because it really does make such a difference to know that you're not alone and that you are being guided and that the other side hears you, knows you, and wants to help you. Bye-bye.